So, Luke, got any movie news for us?
Yes. People across the UK are clapping for the NHS. What do you think of the clapping thing for the NHS? I want to know your thoughts there.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. I didn't hear it today. So I didn't want to do it because I thought, it's stupid. Then loads of people started clapping in my street last week. And because I like to get involved in things, I'm a suckler. A suckler?
I knew I shouldn't have asked you this question because you're going on a...
I
had something to say.
I'm a stickler for tradition, Luke. So when I heard lots of other people clapping, I went out and I had a good old clap. What about you?
Well, you described it as stupid, and I don't think it's necessarily stupid, but I think clapping is a substitute for actually improving the conditions and pay of NHS staff. And there was an article which I just saw literally an hour ago, which was from The Guardian, which says, public urged to raise £5 million for NHS staff with 1 million claps appeal. And I just look at that headline and I just fucking shake with anger. No, I don't really. What you're doing now is kind of moving the NHS into a zone where, it's not really the government's job to, manage the NHS, to look after the NHS. It's something that the public has to, subsidise with their own money instead of, taxing people, rich people ideally, to pay for it. And obviously with the clapping thing, again, it's not a substitute for paying conditions. So yeah, I'm just pretty pissed off about this whole NHS situation. I think, yes, it's definitely, the clapping thing is definitely being used by cynical people to kind of deflect from the poor conditions that the people working in the NHS are currently working in, especially with this coronavirus. And even before the coronavirus, it's not just the coronavirus, which has highlighted, the bad state of our NHS. So yeah, I'm just pretty pissed off about the whole situation, and I felt that I needed to talk about it. So that.
Yeah. Well, actually, to tell you the truth, there's something pissing me off about the NHS.
What is it?
It's all these bloody immigrants who got working for it. I'll tell you what, Luke, national NHS, there's nothing bloody national about it. Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past, we give them a couple of watches, and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the 25-year, count 'em Luke, 25.
It's 30.
Count 'em Luke, 30 whole years, not 1 year more, not 1 year less, of anniversary of Pretty Woman. And Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Pretty Women?
That was a really good intro, Michael. Well done. No
Thank
mistakes
you.
at all.
I know, I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah, you should be. So, Pretty Woman is a 1990 American romantic comedy film directed by Gary Marshall from a screenplay by J.F. Lawton. The film
Did you just say J.F. Kennedy?
No, I did not. I clearly did not. Okay. I said Lawton. Sounds nothing like Kennedy.
Stupid Michael. Always making these mistakes.
The film stars Richard Gere and Julia Roberts and features Hector Elizondo and Ralph Bellamy in his final performance, Laura San Giacomo, yeah, I think the second one is probably the way you pronounce it, and Jason Alexander in supporting roles. It was released on March the 23rd, 1990, so as you said, Michael, this is the 30-year anniversary of Pretty Woman, and can you tell me what the budget was?
I don't know, like maybe 15 million? I mean, I don't think it would be, I don't know, how famous is Richard Gere? Shit, 20 million.
Your initial guess of 15 was incredibly good because the budget was 14 million.
That's annoying. So yeah, I've been going under, I think, a lot for the budget. So this time I thought, I don't want to go under again. So at least I'm happy that I went over. But yeah.
And what about the box office? How much did it make?
I don't think it made too much. 105 million.
What?
105 million. Not like a massive amount.
Oh my god, I can't believe you. I mean...
Yeah, see, this is another one of those examples where I literally don't know which way it's going to go because
Michael.
Yeah, okay, it probably made more, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so we're doing Pretty Woman because it's the 30th anniversary, but also because it's a very famous movie.
No, okay. But I think it could be like a cult classic thing. It's not like every single famous film. I mean,
what romantic comedies do you know that are cult classics?
The Graduate, I don't know.
It is more than 105 million. The box office return for Pretty Woman
was 1 billion.
463 million.
Wow, that's mental. I mean, I guess, again, in my head, I watch this and I just think, who goes to the cinema to watch these things? I would think. I guess you know what it is. It's my when I watch a romantic comedy, I like to sit down with the gals and eat some hot buttered popcorn and just veg out and watch old movies. I like to do. So I don't really go to the cinema these. That's my problem. But
Okay.
Speaking of vegging out and watching old movies, did you like this film, Luke?
No.
I was going to say I thought this film was fine, but maybe slightly on the worst side of fine. I wasn't going to say no.
Well,
Exactly.
I am going to say no.
That's fine. I mean, you can say no. I'll let you. But after all, well, I think that's like I'm big into kind of affirmative consent. So yeah, you can say no. But I'm going to say fine. So why?
Right.
But no matter how fine we think a film is, we've always got nitpicks. So how many nitpicks do you have, Luke?
I actually don't know. I need to check. I forgot. I have 3 and 1 lit pick.
Oh, I have 3 and no nitpicks. So I guess I go first since
You go
nitpicking.
first.
Okay. It was funny how Viv did a complete 180 on getting a pimp in like the space of 5 seconds. She was like, I don't know, like I can't remember exactly what she was. I'm like, maybe we should get a pimp. And then Julia Roberts was like, no, pimps just steal your money and control who you do. And she's like, yeah, you're right. We decide what we charge and when we work and blah, blah, blah. And she was just like, I was like, why? Seems kind of weird. You know, she's just like, maybe we should get a pimp. And it's like, no, you know, obviously not. And she's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's not. I just thought it was a weird conversation. I thought it was stupid of Richard Gere to order escargot, but I'm tentative on this. I think maybe you could say it's like part of his personality that he intentionally ordered something that, you know, I don't know, we'll get into it, but I feel like you can make an argument maybe it's to do with his personality. But assuming it's not to do with his personality, obviously it's silly that he would order escargot because you wouldn't, you know, for somebody, if you're like ordering to somebody, but yeah, I'll order snails. I'm sure, you know, you'd order something safe. So there we go. But again, like I say, it could be a controversial character. Fine. I don't care. And finally, how did he have that opera music to play in the limo? Of course, I'm referring to the scene where he shows up in the limo blasting the opera music of the opera performance they'd previously gone to see. And I'm thinking, how does he have that music? You know, does he just carry it with him in a CD all the time? Did it have to be on the radio? Did they have to stop by a CD shop? And if so, it's a good thing that, you know, he didn't cause her to leave by having to go get the CD. So there we go. That's my question. All done.
Well, I think the answer is probably that he already had it because he clearly likes that opera a lot.
No, I don't know if because I would think in a way that it kind of got, because he says he's like a fan of opera in general, and I would think the fact that the only opera he happened to show her is also the opera that he carries, unless he carries CDs around of like all the operas. I think they should have, you know what I think they should have done though? I think they should have had a kind of a Chekhov's gun moment where they show him earlier on buying the opera soundtrack. There's some guy outside going, hey, buy the opera soundtrack. And he's like, okay, I'll buy it because I really like it. And maybe he gives her a copy too. And then that could be a thing. And then they set it up and I wouldn't have this question. Brilliant.
Okay, well, I think it's more of like, you know, how if you had a girlfriend who was new, you would show her your favourite movie. Say your favourite movie was No Country for Old Men. You know, you'd walk her downstairs and play it for everybody who was in the lounge at that time, just to show her. But it's the same thing here. He's probably like, oh, I want to show Julia Roberts this opera because it's my favourite opera. So I'm going to take her there. So it makes sense.
So like, it's a bit like how like when, you know, you like had a girl and you showed her Anal Assassins 4 because that's your favourite movie. you're like, I got this movie I really like to show. I know you don't sound like that. I can't do your accent, Luke. So I just, in my head, you're a generic northerner, even though you're not.
You can't do any accent.
Yeah, no, yeah. But you're like, I got this movie I'd really like to show you. It's my favourite film of all time, and I want to share it with you. And as you're getting ready, you're like, people's reactions are very visceral. They either hate it or they love it. And it comes like, Anal Assassins 4. Classic.
Well, that would be a really funny thing to do. But anyway, I'm going to get onto my nitpicks now. So here's my first one. A woman that is as attractive as Julia Roberts is in this movie, I don't think would be going into sex work and be working on the streets. I reckon she'd
be an escort.
Yeah, she'd be an escort. And her friend should advise her that, hey, you could get a job as being a, you know,
so you're saying
escort.
her friend's not a friend at all. Her friend's a snake.
Exactly. Her friend
like
doesn't want her to do better
Warren.
than them. Yeah. Just like Elizabeth Warren. Even though, obviously, she doesn't show those characteristics in the end, I have to think, well, why aren't you telling her, hey, you know, you can do better than this? Or she would get scouted. You know, one of the pimp scouts. Well, no, I guess you wouldn't really call escort agency pimps, would you? That's a different thing, you know. Escort agencies.
It's all very complicated how these this sex work works.
Yeah. So yeah, but basically she'd get scouted. She wouldn't be on the streets when she met Richard Gere. Also, the balcony that Richard Gere and Julia Roberts go out on, you know, over the course of the movie. Like,
yes.
It's so fake. It's so fake looking. You can tell it's inside a studio. It is really bad.
Yes.
My final nitpick is that this movie is R-rated. And I was shocked when, apparently this is Disney's highest ever R-rated movie in terms of box office returns. So I was quite confused at why this was R-rated, because there's hardly any swearing. You see Julia Roberts...
Someone says fuck like once.
Yeah, and you see Julia Roberts' nipples like once. There's just one shot of her and Richard Gere together. Apart from that, there is literally no boobs or anything else on display that would make it an R rating. I just don't understand why it needed to be an R.
Well, maybe it was because, you needed to be an R so you can jack off in the cinema without being judged. Yeah,
I don't think the people who were going to see this movie in the droves that did go to see it were jacking off, I have to say. I don't think they have the ability to do that.
What's the point of jacking off if there aren't even people there to go, hey buddy, this is Frozen?
Wow. Of all the movies to pick, you picked that one. Okay,
right. It's because I had that previous comment about finding Anna really attractive.
Don't act like you can't remember her name.
Well, you know what? I mean, to be honest, I was going to call her Anya for a second because, it would make sense because that's kind of like a hot person name, isn't it?
Okay. Well, my last... Well, it's a lit pick.
I'm excited for this. I want to know why you got a lit pick for this film you hate.
So it was Julia Roberts' friend. What was she called? Let me get her up.
It was Viv.
No, her friend.
Oh, wait. I mean, her friend was called Viv, wasn't she?
No, her friend was not called Viv. Julia Roberts' character was called Viv.
Oh, holy shit. What was her friend called?
Her friend was called Kit DeLuca.
Oh, okay. I was completely off about that then. Okay, you nailed it, Luke. And I look like a tomfool.
Yeah, this is why we should go through the names of characters beforehand because... And we didn't
do it this week. Because you're always forgetting them.
Yeah, no. Because you fucking forget them, and we didn't do it this week because, I don't know, we just didn't. But we should have, because I remember you were doing a nitpick before when talking about Vivian.
And I said, I got her name wrong.
And I was like, okay, whatever. He must be... He kind of confused the characters, but you did. So, yeah.
I aim to please.
So, Kit DeLuca, Julia Roberts' friend, says this fantastic line, which is... So Julia Roberts is talking about, it never works out. And then Kit DeLuca says, about these girls, she says this line, those were very specific cases of crackheads.
Oh yeah, I actually did find that line quite funny too.
Yeah, you did. And I don't think it was intentionally, well, of course it's meant to be kind of funny, but it's just it's such a great line. And I think it would make a great gif. Those were very specific cases of crackheads. What a fucking line. So I found that funny. And I don't know if other people will find it funny as me, but I just, given the delivery of the situation, it wasn't that funny a line.
It wasn't slapping your knees.
Yeah, well, the character wasn't intending it to be that funny. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. But the fact that she said, again, those were very specific case of crackheads, I just found with the conversation they were having quite funny. So I wanted to give that a lit pick because you don't get many romantic comedies which have lines like that. So fair play to them. Here's the thing, Michael. So first, let's talk about the success of this movie first.
Yes.
Because obviously we talked about before how you were way under in terms of guessing the budget. Sorry, not the budget, the box office. This was the third highest grossing film of 1990, was Pretty Woman. And also the film saw the highest number of ticket sales in the United States ever for a romantic comedy, with Box Office Mojo listing it as the number one romantic comedy by the highest estimated domestic tickets sold at 42,176,400, slightly ahead of My Big Fat Greek Wedding by about 1,000. Of course, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I think, is the most... it's the highest
grossing, yeah.
Yeah, the highest grossing, but obviously, because of inflation, came out 12 years after Pretty Woman. That kind of makes sense. So yeah, that was just something I thought needed to be, brought up. And obviously, Michael, we had someone who we used to live with who really liked Pretty Woman. Can you remember?
Alex specifically really liked Julia Roberts. Yes,
just the most beautiful woman ever.
Yes.
This movie has obviously is incredibly famous. Has a lot of staying power. People still talk about it and reference scenes in this movie to this day. So let's go firstly into the development of this movie, because although it is, again, one of the most famous romantic comedies ever, initially it wasn't conceived as a romantic comedy, Michael. Did you know that?
It was conceived as a horror.
It actually was. It was conceived as a dark drama about sex work in Los Angeles in the 1980s.
So basically it was conceived as Leaving Las Vegas.
I mean, I guess so. But obviously this would have come out before Leaving Las Vegas. So
I can't really remember the order of things. Leaving Las Vegas looks older because, it's so grimy and horrible.
Okay.
Anyway.
The relationship between Vivian and Edward also originally involved controversial themes, including Vivian being addicted to drugs. Part of the deal was that she had to stay off cocaine for a week. Edward eventually throws her out of his car and drives off. The original script by Jeff Lawton, called 3000, ended with Vivian and her sex worker friend on the bus to Disneyland. Do you know who changed this, Michael? Who changed it from a dark drama about sex work in LA in the 80s to a happy rom-com? Do you know who did that?
Harvey Weinstein.
No. It was Walt Disney Studios' then president,
Michael Eisner.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh, yeah, I forget. And he's the one who then started DreamWorks.
Yeah.
Don't worry, look, I got one bit of truth in there. Well done, me.
Yeah, who insisted that the film be rewritten as a modern-day fairy tale and love story, as opposed to the original dark drama. It was pitched to Touchstone Pictures and rewritten as a romantic comedy. The title 3000 was changed because Disney executives, wisely, I think, thought it sounded like a title for a science fiction film.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I would agree. Obviously, there's 300.
I think they would have called it $3,000. I think that would have been fine.
Yeah, that would have been better, but I think Pretty Woman...
Well, I don't like calling it Pretty Woman because there's already a song called Pretty Woman, which is not about being a prostitute.
I know, but...
They should have named it after a song about a prostitute. They should have, like Roxanne. Roxanne!
Okay, well, anyway, basically, this movie, and we'll talk about it later when talking about the class and the themes around that in this movie, but yeah, it was originally conceived as something incredibly different, which, is weird to think about. Obviously, incredibly different to the romantic comedy it became. But anyway, let's get into the plot now, Michael. So, I'll just read this off Wikipedia. The film story centres on down-on-her-luck Hollywood sex worker Vivian Ward, who is hired by Edward Lewis, played by Richard Gere, of course, Vivian Ward played by Julia Roberts, obviously, Edward Lewis, a wealthy businessman, to be his escort for several business and social functions, and their developing relationship over the course of her week-long stay with him. And obviously, the film's title, Pretty Woman, is based on a pretty woman
walking down the street. Pretty woman. Oh.
Sorry. Written and sung by Roy Orbison. You sounded so disappointed then when you had to stop.
I wanted to just sing it forever.
Do you want to sing it for a while? Do you want to do that?
I don't believe it. You're not the truth. Or something like that. It's probably... I feel like I got the pronouns wrong. Which is a big problem nowadays.
Okay. Wow.
Hot.
Yeah.
Since the war the SJWs took over.
Okay. It is the first film on-screen collaboration between Gere and Roberts. So that's also something to be noted.
What are their other collaborations? Am I being stupid here? Do they have loads of other films together? The only other film I know from Richard Gere is he does something with Jennifer Lopez called Shall We Dance?
I actually looked this up. The second collaboration was in 1999 with another romantic comedy film called Runaway, also directed by the same man who directed Pretty Woman, which was Gary Marshall. So, yeah, they tried this thing again in 99. Wasn't as successful, wasn't as good, because I looked this up after, wasn't as reviewed as well as this one was either. So, yeah, it was a bit of a come down from Pretty Woman, was Runaway Bride, but yeah, it's still rated in 350 million at the box office. So, yeah. Anyway, this is important, Michael, this movie, not just because of the fact that, obviously, it was the launching pad for Julia Roberts' career, but also... The film is one of the two movies that triggered a resurgence of romantic comedy in Hollywood. The other being when Harry
Notting Hill.
No, Notting Hill was 99 as well.
I know, yeah, that was so much later.
Yeah. When the other being When Harry Met Sally, of course, which came out in 89. Following the film's success, Roberts became the romantic comedy queen of the 1990s. That is something that I got off Wikipedia. I disagree. I disagree. I think that's Meg Ryan. I think that has to be Meg Ryan because she just did more. Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail,
Jinx.
Yeah, some other ones which I can't remember that she did as well.
That's my favourite.
Yeah, and obviously she started off fucking it all with When Harry Met Sally. So yeah, I think Julia Roberts isn't the queen. I think it's Meg Ryan. That's what I'm going to say.
Yas, queen.
Yeah, okay. So Michael, let's get into the plot now.
Yes.
Of Pretty Woman. So, obviously, as mentioned before, it is a kind of a fairy tale of fantasy girl who... Well, it's a modern-day Cinderella story. They even mention, Vivian's friend Kit even mentions Cinderella. It is about this girl who is really struggling in her life. She can't pay rent. Oh, look at that. She's literally saved by a knight in shining armour, who was Richard Gere. And, she's brought up from
Who,
this horrible
ironically,
place.
can't shift gears.
Yeah, that is incredibly ironic. And, she basically saves her. So what do you have to say on the plot, Michael?
Okay, I'll start with the basics, the fundamental things. So when I'm watching a romantic comedy, I like to... The best thing a romantic comedy can do is make me feel the things it wants me to feel. Make me feel sad when it wants me to feel sad, make me cringe when it wants me to cringe, makes me smile when it wants me to smile, makes me feel elated when I want to feel elated. It makes me feel turned on when it wants me to feel turned on. And I would say, generally speaking, this film, it didn't really do that. In a way that even, there are romantic comedies that, can elicit some of those feelings from me. I mean, sure, it was pretty hot when he, was kissing her on the piano. I mean, I'm sure that every woman was quite into that because Richard Gere's a handsome man. But really, for most of the film, I was quite bored. Towards the end, I did start to feel, I think, the intended emotion when he was climbing up that fire escape, and the music was swelling, and I felt like a little pit of this. I'm feeling something inside me. But for most of the film, I was very bored because I didn't feel anything. For me, basically, when we're talking about the plot, no one's going oh, it's not like Lord of the Rings. Where I really like the character motivation. Basically, the best thing a romantic comedy can do is make you feel the emotions of the film, the emotions of the film. Once you feel it with the plot, I don't think it really succeeded in doing that. So that's my broad opinion on the plot. Okay,
well, you said before that a romantic comedy isn't really concerned about characters' motivations, and I do have a bit of a...
it has to be I guess I should say, it can be, but not in not in a plot way. For example, it has to be concerned about character motivation, that the romance has to feel believable. But for example, it's not like bloomin', let me think of an example. Let's say Game of Thrones. Obviously, with Game of Thrones, you're like, oh yeah, I really like Game of Thrones because I really believed that Cersei's character was sincere when she did this thing. So obviously, I'm not talking about that sense. But I think in terms of having to believe the characters are experiencing the emotions they're experiencing, yes, you need character motivation. I don't know, but tell me what you're going to say,
Luke. Okay. So, you are broadly... you're right in saying that plot in rom-coms doesn't really matter. Although I'm going to contend that it should matter, because it's just a movie. It's a movie, just like any other movie, the plot needs to matter. And I was really struggling to work out why there is a reason that Richard Gere really needs Julia Roberts. Why he takes her to his hotel room in the first place instead of just dropping her off. Because here's the thing, the reason that is given, that Julia Roberts stays with him for a week and he pays her $3,000, is that, I think it's quite flimsy. It's kind of like, you're meeting other rich people, having dinner with them. It'd be better if you have companionship. So, I don't know. So maybe it doesn't feel so businessy. It's just not the best motivation. And I'm really not sure as to why, again, Richard Gere says to Julia Roberts, hey, come up to my hotel room. Why does he do that? I don't understand. There's no reason given. It's just like, okay, you got me to where I want to go. I'll pay you your money. And then I'm going up in my hotel room to do business. Why does he want her to come with him? Well, tell me why, Michael. Why is that? Why does he tell her to come with him up to his hotel room? Okay. Because if it had been established before that he needs, maybe he needs companionship. He needs a woman to show other business people. Woman. Yeah, a pretty one to show other business people, hey, it's not all about business. Let's relax. Let's chill. But that reason was only given after he invites her up. So tell me, Michael, why? Okay,
well, I have 3 comments. One of which isn't an answer to your question, but kind of an agreement with your question. I think what they should have done is have this film should have had more of a section that deals with our 2 characters in their respective situations, which I think a lot of other romantic comedies will do. So they will have a situation where we see our man, assuming it's a heteronormative romantic comedy, we'll see our man, he'll be going about his day, again, usually giving some indication of why he needs some companionship. And then we'll have our woman. I'm sure Notting Hill does that. I'm sure I don't know, Love Actually does that. I think You've Got Mail does that. We have these scenes of the characters going about their day and they're signing off. And then, that facilitates the romance. Obviously in this film, you don't have that. Now, I will say, there is one explanation I might have for why Richard Gere would do that, but I think that's actually jumping a bit ahead. So the only thing I can say now is that maybe it's supposed to be, like, it's just an impulsive decision that's completely baseless, which is not an answer to your question. In fact, it's the opposite to an answer to your question, but it is, the only explanation I can think of. Like, sometimes, it's kind of like, I guess it's like a what the hell moment. That's the only way you can explain it. That Richard Gere thinks to himself, oh, what the hell, I'll just, invite her up. Which obviously is not a motivation. So I guess what I'm saying is, I can't think of an exact motivation, but I guess I can imagine a situation where maybe he doesn't have a motivation, he just goes, what the hell?
Yeah. So maybe it is a what the hell moment, but again, I think you're right. You need some basis beforehand, to establish Richard Gere's character, because here's the thing with him. So yeah, maybe it is a what the hell moment from him. But I also agree with you that I would have liked to seen him actually, before he meets Vivian, before, he invites her up, to actually establish his character more. Or maybe even when he's with Vivian, before they have sex for the first time. Because here's the thing, when they're just up in the room talking.
No sex before marriage.
Yeah. So I would like if there was more of an indication at the beginning that he wasn't happy with his work. He only did what he did because of his dad. It's not really examined that much, especially at the start. It's like comes in like halfway through the movie and then it's kind of move on. And eventually, of course, with his character arc, it involves him being, I guess, an anti-capitalist, Michael. That's what it involves. Yeah. You could argue that Julia Roberts in this movie is a revolutionary prostitute.
Yeah, she's a regular Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. So everybody who she has sex with turns them into a socialist. She's got something. Bernie could have used her.
I bet, to be honest, I bet the brochurists would love that.
Well, they're already converted.
Yeah, I know.
It's those rich old white men which she needs to convert.
No, so I bet the brochurists would feel proper friend zoned. Yeah. Like, I was always a socialist. Why won't you sleep with me, Julia Roberts?
Yeah,
that's my impression of Chapo Trap House right there. Okay. We're coming for them, Luke. Let's start a drama. They're a big podcast. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. They're the most on Patreon. They've got the most people donating. So yeah, if you can get some controversy, that'll be great. Anyway, so basically, Richard Gere's time with Vivian. This is from the Wikipedia page. Richard Gere's time with Vivian has shown him a different way of looking at life, and he suggests the tycoon, work together to save the company rather than tearing it apart and selling it off for pieces. And of course, they're building ship together for the Navy, so it is somewhat anti-capitalist, but it is still pro-military industrial complex. So I guess you'll take the wins where you can
best of both worlds.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so obviously, jokes aside, he learns to be more loving, which how convenient. Oh no, not convenient. That's not the word. How coincidental that it is anti-capitalist. Being more loving and being less of a dick. But anyway, that's what he does. And I'm just thinking, it would be great at the beginning of the movie if they showed him like really not enjoying his work, really hating what he does, because obviously he says that line, "I screw people for money," but you don't really get a sense that he minds doing it. It's just like, this is what I do. This is my job. It's just like any other job. And it'd be really good if at the beginning you had some scenes with him just really, I guess, not enjoying life, and him just sighing as he looks at things and clearly showing that he doesn't have passion for it, because obviously he's not a very passionate guy. So you could argue, well, how would he display emotions if his whole character is no emotions are really displayed? But to make the character arc work better, that's what you'd have to do. And that maybe would explain, that what we talked about before, the what the hell attitude. It's like there's a piece of him
wants
that
to be impulsive.
Yeah, that breaks. He wants to be impulsive. He wants to do things like that.
There's a line he says where he says, I plan everything, which is literally contradicted by his action. It's like he's, I don't know, Julia Roberts like, do you plan everything? I don't know why she said that. And he's like, yes, I plan everything, Julia Roberts. Yeah, I don't. But basically, by his own logic, he didn't plan everything, because he wasn't planning on unless that's actually a really sinister line. It turns out he's orchestrated this whole thing. He knew how to drive the car all along. But yeah, basically he says, like, I don't plan anything. Oh, sorry, I plan everything. And then he clearly doesn't. And again, they could have done that in a clever way. They could have made like, the fact that he, chose to be impulsive when it was with Julia Roberts, that's something, that shows that he doesn't plan everything and that they're going to do something with that. But it actually kind of just seems like a plot hole, really. That he says, oh, I plan everything, and then he, clearly doesn't. So yeah, you're basically right. They could have had that be a thing where, like, sometimes he just needs to be impulsive. Maybe someone could have said it to him. Maybe he could have spoken to his little friend lawyer, and his lawyer could have gone,
George Costanza, yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta do something impulsive. And maybe he's talking about, I don't know, doing some crazy thing. Like, maybe they're playing golf together, and he's like, I'm gonna hit this, I'm gonna tee off with my putter. Because sometimes you just gotta do something impulsive.
I can tell you really know the game of golf.
And then he tees off with his putter, and it goes hole in one.
It goes hole in one.
It goes hole in one. It does in a par 7.
And then George Costanza can say, "You see, you just gotta just be impulsive.
Just grab life by the throat."
Yeah, Richard Gere goes, "Huh." No, but that's the thing. It would be good to because
I think you can make slap it across the face.
Okay, we'll get onto that later. But yeah, I think you can definitely make it work. I think the premise is a bit faulty, but I think you can make it work if you establish Richard Gere's character better, and it also works for his character arc as well. Means his character arc is more fulfilling. I think it works better. If you can clearly see right at the start, he doesn't really like his job, which again, you don't get a sense of until he starts talking to Julia Roberts about his dad. And even then, it's not really that clear. But anyway, so Michael, I think we should now move on to talking about the romance in this movie between Julia Roberts and Richard Gere.
Yes.
And what do you want to talk about? You talk about what you want to talk about first, because you want to talk about the sexual politics of this movie.
Yeah, kind of.
Because that's important. So go on.
So it's interesting to me that you say that this film was originally conceived as perhaps being a drama, because I think there is a kind of sinister underside to this film, and I wanted to when you said, like, why does he ask her to stay, and I said, there's there isn't a reason I can think of, and the reason I can think of is basically just a sinister reason, that when you look at what this guy is, he you get the impression like maybe he just views Julia Roberts as a project. And the reason I say it is because he's a very intelligent guy. He's a guy who he's obviously really smart, and you get the impression that he is kind of just crafting her throughout the film. And, I don't really have too much to say about that, because I think you could say, well, it's not necessarily the craziest thing to do. I mean, women like to take their guys out. I was going to say husbands, probably that's a bit premature, but their guys out and make them dress up in clothes. That's doing something. But I do have another thing, and this is the main thing I want to get at. Julia Roberts, I think, is very infantilized in this film, especially at the beginning. She's very giggly, she's very cute, and then obviously there's like that scene of her like on the floor at Richard Gere's feet, watching these old movies, giggling away, and Richard Gere's like looking at her, and I just thought to myself, it's a very, like I say, she looks very kind of young and like a real free spirit. And obviously I'm not suggesting that there's some kind of paedophilia thing going on. I mean, I believe Julia Roberts is a full-grown woman.
Well, they are in Hollywood.
That's true. Well, she's very young, and obviously Richard Gere, you kind of get the impression he's a bit of a daddy, isn't he? Is Richard Gere? He's kind of a daddy. And
the way you say that.
Yeah, he's just a little bit of a daddy, I just think. So basically, I just think there's a very paternal streak to Richard Gere in this film, which obviously, it's fair to say that I think some women would probably say they like that. I mean, there's a reason why there's a reason why women will sometimes use that daddy language. But obviously, it's a thing that's there, and it's relevant when there is obviously a massive power differential between them. She's literally in his employ, and he's much richer than her, which obviously we'll get into. And then on top of that, she is played as a very kind of young, seeming character, someone who just like giggles all the time. Obviously, we associate giggling with being a little kid. And then he's very kind of stern and sincere. He's like, "You shouldn't do that, darling, or I'll have to take you over my knee right now." So he's a bit of a daddy. So that's point one.
Do you think then that? Well, do you think then Julia Roberts is a bit of a, what's that phrase? I can't remember. Manic pixie dream girl. That's it. Ooh. Do you think she's a bit of that? Maybe because that's
bit of that.
Maybe that's what you're hinting at, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a different thing. In that I think the main difference I would make is in a manic pixie dream girl, it's kind of usually it's a guy who kind of hasn't got everything going as he wants in life, and he needs this woman.
Well, that is Richard Gere.
Okay, I get that. And he needs this woman though, and I'm going to make a distinction. I mean, initially, as I explain what a manic pixie dream girl is against Richard Gere, I want to make a subtle distinction. That he needs this woman to kind of show him how to live his life better and get down to earth. Now you're going to say, I know what you're saying, that's Richard Gere. But I think the only thing that makes it not a manic pixie dream girl is that I think Richard Gere exerts a lot of control in a relationship. which somebody wouldn't have in a Manic Pixie Dream Girl scenario. So obviously, I don't know. For me, the classic Manic Pixie Dream Girl scenario is Yes Man, starring Jim Carrey and Zooey Deschanel. And in that film, it's mostly like Jim Carrey's kind of being led by the hand by Zooey Deschanel, his Manic Pixie Dream Girl. And I'm pretty sure that's how it works in most other Manic Pixie Dream Girl films. It's like the guy is kind of just very passive and is basically being like, she's like, hey, let's go out and look at the stars. Whereas in this version, Richard Gere is the one in control, and he's the one going like, we're going to go to the opera and you're going to like it. And then we're going to meet my friends because I'm paying you lots of money. So I don't know why I make him British. I just think he looks like a British person. And also that's kind of the way I do a posh voice. I don't know how Americans speak to be posh, but I assume they speak in British accents. Anyways, the point being he has power and he's kind of exerting control over the situation, which I think you wouldn't get of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl scenario. And that leads me to the other thing, which I think would make it interesting if it was not a romantic comedy. Because as a romantic comedy, essentially it has to boil down to, okay, she's kind of a bit of a like Manic Pixie Dream Girl, you could say, but then Richard Gere challenges that dynamic by being a daddy. And that's all you can really do. And essentially the crux of it has to be, well, women like Richard Gere because he's hot, and a lot of women probably wouldn't mind a guy who is at least in some situations a bit paternal. Fine, whatever. But in a drama, that could be really interesting, because then you've got this whole idea of like, he's got all this control over her. He's maybe kind of a bit of, he says he likes to plan everything. He's got all of this power over her, and then on top of that, like the fact that he engages in these impulsive decisions of just being like, oh yeah, come up to my room. And then he's like, oh, I don't really want to have sex with you anyway. It implies that he's just, toying with her, which I think would be much more interesting. But overall, I think as it is, it's kind of just one. I'm not really going to say it's sexist. I think it's fine. I think it's there. I think obviously you could make a treatise regarding gender politics of this film, but I wouldn't say this film is, quote, problematic. What I will say though is I think there was a grounds based in the problematic elements of this film to make a much more interesting exploration of the kind of character that Richard Gere represents.
Okay, so you're saying it's not problematic. You're saying that the sexual politics, or maybe not the politics, just the difference between the two characters in terms of gender it's fine. You don't have many issues with it.
No.
So I'm going to
pivot
go in a bit of different direction here, because I agree. I don't think, talking about the gender differences, it's not really down to that. That's not really why this movie could be considered, quote unquote, problematic.
We do love quote unquoting that old problematic.
Yeah, we do. We love it. I think really it can be considered problematic not because the movie's sexist, but because it's classist. Yeah, that's going to be my thing. That's the way I looked at it. And I think, obviously, it was originally intended to be a dark cautionary tale about class and sex worth in Los Angeles. And then it was reconceived as a romantic comedy with a large budget. So when you're watching this movie, you have to ask yourself a question, Michael, which is, who learns a lesson in this movie?
We do.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not Richard Gere. Even though he has a character arc, I would say that's different to a lesson. Like, he becomes who he wants to be. I'm talking specifically about who, learns something, improves themselves in a way they weren't originally intended to, or it didn't want to in the first place. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And that is Julia Roberts. She learns how to be rich. And here's the thing I kept thinking throughout the movie, that rich people only treat her nice because of Richard Gere and the money that he has, and therefore the money that she has when she goes shopping, obviously. And it is kind of like, well, if you want to be treated respectfully, you have to be rich. You have to be in this world.
They're trying to crack me if they ever see a poor me.
Yes, that's how it goes. And who's the hotel concierge or the hotel manager? That character.
George? Isn't he called George? Or is that weird? I'm sure he's called George.
I shall look it up right now. It's Barney. So you got that completely wrong. But anyway, so that's the thing. Barney Thompson allows Julia Roberts to get into this world. And, he doesn't, learn a lesson. Richard Gere doesn't learn a lesson about all those rich people at the high street shops. They don't learn a lesson. It is, well, you could say the two
women who throw her out learn a lesson.
Yeah, they don't. They kind of learn a lesson, but maybe, I think it's more of, oh shit, we could have got a lot of money from that person.
Yeah, it's a lesson, but it's not a moron.
Yeah, we could have got a lot of money from that person. We fucked up, rather than we should treat people better. That's kind of the implication from it. And everybody everybody treats.
Yeah, they're not sorry they did it. They're sorry they got found out.
Yeah, everyone treats Julia Roberts with contempt throughout the movie until she becomes this this person that Richard Gere crafts her into being. She's not respected at the start for who she is. She has to change, and become someone who isn't a prostitute or a hooker, and then she gets the respect. I think it is almost at the start, actually. She is kind of treated like a pet. That's why I feel like it is like...
No, actually, that's completely... I mean, that's obviously, I said infantilized, but I think that's a perfectly other kind of valid way of framing it. She kind of seems like, Richard Gere owns her and he's like having fun with her.
Yeah, kind of, but it's also the other characters who treat her. It's like, no, you have to come on, you have to be better. Like, I guess that you could also argue she's treated like a child, so that works, but I put pet down because that's my first reaction. But yeah,
because you wanted to contradict me.
Yeah,
you wanted to make it like a fool.
Basically, she's treated like a lesser person than Richard Gere, Barney, everybody in their world. And also there's this implication as well that she was never meant to be a hooker. She's better than that. She's a proper lady,
Yeah.
That's all the lines that are uttered throughout the movie. Like, you should look down on people who are hookers, who are prostitutes. You should do that. And obviously there's some messages in the movie which contradict what I'm saying here. The way she stands up for herself when George Costanza hits on her. Yeah. But overall, I think that is the overall tone of the movie, and you see it in so many lines when her friend says you were never meant for like Hollywood Boulevard. It's like, there are some people who are meant for Hollywood Boulevard, and there are some people who aren't meant for Hollywood Boulevard, and that is the class system that we live in, and this movie kind of perpetuates that. And I think even at the end of the movie, when Richard Gere punches his lawyer after he tries to rape Julia Roberts, you notice the argument after, and this is from The Independent, I'm just going to read it. But why is the preceding argument about business and not the fact that he just tried to rape her? It's kill you love, Richard Gere tells George Costanza before throwing his briefcase out of the room, not me. It doesn't really focus on how dare you do that to her.
I think that too.
Yeah, and Richard Gere, obviously, he doesn't even call the police, doesn't think about that. And it's kind of the implication like, well, Julia Roberts, she's in that line of work. It happens, she's kind of, hey, it's what's to be expected almost that something like that would happen, and that, it wouldn't be this thing that he'd call the police about. It's like, oh, maybe I'm being too harsh, but I do think there's this kind of like, should really, there should be more severe consequences for George Costanza. Yeah. Whatever the actor's called, I don't actually know. I should probably know that because he's obviously incredibly famous, but that's how I know him as, so I'm going to keep calling him that. Probably be more consequences for George Costanza than just, he loses his job. And that he was probably going to quit anyway because, he was tired of Edward. Doing what Ed was doing what he did. And that's the thing about him, actually. He's not really a villain throughout the movie because he's just doing what Richard Gere employed him. Yeah, it's like, we're meant to be these capitalists who just, crush these businesses, who dismantle them and sell them off for profit. That's what we're meant to do. That's what you hired me to do. That's what I'm doing. Why are you all of a sudden turning? And so obviously he has to be the villain at the end and tries to sexually assault Julia Roberts. But yeah, it's just like, again, that right there is like, well, she's, I think that scene, and that's what I took from the Independent saying what they said in their article about Pretty Woman, and that's what I took from this movie as a whole. It does seem to treat Julia Roberts' character with like, oh, she did, she's not as good as us, and it's not that we need to change; she needs to get better. And I think that message is, it's a classist message, which I think that's something that is, I guess, if you want to label something problematic, that would probably be it. So yeah, what do you think about that, Michael?
So regarding like what you're saying about how it kind of seems like it's treated as an occupational hazard and not that much of a big deal, I agree. Yeah, I think definitely.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Yeah, occupational.
The analogy I can almost give it's almost like he was caught stealing, and that's kind of what you'd say. Like, I think there is that idea that's like, well, if you're a prostitute, then you're selling goods, and your goods is sex. So if someone tries to rape you, it's not rape, it's theft, and that's almost the analogy you can kind of get. That, yeah. It's almost like hey, get out of her store. Like, if in another thing, it'd be like, some guy is trying to steal from her and he going, hey, get out of here. Which obviously, the thing being there, that obviously, stealing, like, I guess there's the implication of was that when you become a sex worker, you are implicitly saying this is available, and therefore, like when somebody tries to take it by force, that's not rape. That's that's theft. That's trying to take something when you haven't paid for it, which obviously is problematic. Yeah, so I agree 100% that it's not really presented as look at how horrible this guy is, and look at this terrible thing he's doing, in terms of it being kind of a experience common to women that is obviously a serious crime to be committed against women. Instead, it's like, oh, look at how slimy this guy is. Oh, good old Richard Gere is here to save the day.
I can imagine Richard Gere punching Judge Costanza and going, "Hey, no, that's my prostitute. You get your own. Fuck off. How dare you try and take mine?" Obviously that's not what he says. And again, maybe we're going too much into it, but that is kind of the implication of the scene, because again, he does not deal with the fact that this guy just tried to rape her. And that is something that, needs to, I think the guy should be arrested for that.
Yeah, I'm personally, I'm against rape.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know it's virtue signaling and everything, but I just wanted to make that clear in case there are any women listening who would be impressed by my firm stand I'm taking right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who else was firm? George
you
Costanza.
would non-endorse Donald Trump for the presidency and instead vote for Joe Biden.
No, did you hear that there was one of the Joe Biden staffers, who's a woman, incidentally, after the whole accusations against Joe Biden came out, she scrubbed her Twitter page of all the support she had shown for, and I'm not going to be able to remember the name of the person, but the person who accused Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, it was Dr. Ford. I can't remember her first name, but it was.
Christy Ford, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Christy Ford, something like that. Anyway, yeah. She basically got rid of all the evidence that she ever supported.
And who's that woman, Alyssa Milano? She so cravenly has removed #MeToo from her bio.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like fucking hell. You're just surprised at how craven some people are. But it shows the only people with principles are people who are left wing. That's what it shows. Yeah.
It really does, yeah. What kind of world are we living in when you can't even trust the centrists to stand by what's right? Regarding the other things about how, Julia Roberts needs to become middle class or upper class, I should say, and now that's that's her story. Yes, I think that is there. As a literal fairy tale, that's the story of the fairy tale. The old maid becomes I suppose with Cinderella it's the worst thing, because in her case it's as they say, it's the story of a woman who suffers the exploitation of the working class only to then become a member of the ruling class who now gets other people to suffer the exploitation of the working class to her benefit. So this isn't too bad. I think the worst story would be the more accurate Cinderella comparison would be if Julia Roberts lives a hard life as a prostitute only to one day marry a prince with a large harem of prostitutes. That would be the more accurate comparison. But in terms of, her becoming rich, not her becoming rich, but her having to become more upper class, it's definitely there. I don't know if it bothers me, mostly because I think it's fair to say that a lot of people, abstractly, and a lot of women also, probably like the idea, at least of engaging in some aspects of being upper class. I think there are a lot of women and men who, would be like, oh, lovely, I get to, go to the, what's that place? Ascot? Yeah, Ascot. I think there are lots of people like, oh yeah, I'd love to go to Ascot. Great. Or go to a boating club. That sounds fun. And obviously, having said that,
but they're not good enough to get in. And therefore,
see, that's the thing. I think, what I think the flip side is the bad aspect is the attitude of the other people. So I think, anyway, it's not necessarily, I don't really have a problem with the film treating Julia Roberts becoming upper class as a thing to be desired, because I think I could imagine from Julia Roberts' perspective.
I haven't critiqued that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the other characters having contempt for her.
Okay, yeah, and I definitely, I do agree with that. I think it's not good. And I mean, having said that, there are some, I guess you'd say fun moments where but even then, I guess I was going to say there's fun moments where other characters are enamored with her attitude, her cavalier attitude. But then the flip side is, even as I say that as a positive, again, it is kind of in a way of a dance, monkey dance kind of thing of isn't she silly? Isn't she entertaining? So yeah, I'd agree. It's definitely a problematic element in terms of class.
Yeah, and here's the thing, you talk about Cinderella, but obviously you didn't have that moment of, Richard, or the prince in Cinderella, crafting Cinderella like Richard Gere does to Julia Roberts in this movie. It was like, oh no, that you're not good enough, that here's how you become good enough. And again, yes, I guess this is the problem with these kind of fairy tales. I guess it's always about somebody who goes from nothing to something. But the issue with this movie is that the people who have something treat the person who has nothing as though she's a bad person,
as if she is nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase it, actually, as if she is nothing. And that is, unfortunately, like we said, classist. So that needs to be pointed out. But I will say, on a positive for the romance, there are some good things. Again, the scene where Julia Roberts does, fight back, I guess, when Richard Gere tells George Costanza that she's a hooker, so sort of, showing him that, hey, I don't want to be treated like that. That's good. That's a good moment. And obviously Richard Gere relents and says she was wrong. Sorry, says he was wrong. That's good. And overall, the chemistry between the two is good. Obviously, if we're just talking like on the romance and not any analysis of the romance that we have been doing, just the chemistry between Richard Gere and Julia Roberts is really good. The contrast between Julia Roberts' character and Richard Gere's character, hey, it's kind of, it makes it work, because they obviously, the idea is that, well, you have to have one. Obviously, just removing all the class analysis from it for a second. Obviously, they're two incredibly different people. So therefore, hey, if we're going to get these two people together, then they got to have chemistry, even though they're completely different, and they do. So that's what that's what makes it work. That's why this movie is incredibly successful, because of the two leads doing so well together on screen. What do you think?
Yes, I really do. I mean, I think honestly. Really, I don't know if I was able to identify. I think, yeah, actually, I suppose there is a natural chemistry. I think the problem is that the plot progression is not done in a way that makes you feel that chemistry. So I think that's the issue. Because obviously, like I say, I mean, when the plot kind of gets to the point where it's kind of ramping up, I did feel the romantic connection and the chemistry. And there are a few moments where you do feel a natural sense of chemistry. But overall, I think, I suppose, actually, this is kind of going back to the plot, but I think it's relevant. It's too plotty in a very bizarre way, where it kind of just feels like it's people doing things. And a lot of it doesn't feel like it's motivated by emotion for a large portion of the middle of the film, which is a very strange situation, where it only really starts to feel as if the film is really motivated by emotion after the point where Julia Roberts has an issue with, Richard Gere saying she's a prostitute, and then she goes to leave, and then that's when the emotion starts to kick in. But I think actually I've just realised, I've cracked in my own head why I wasn't so interested in the film. It's because really, from honestly almost the entirety of the first hour and a half of the film, it's not really directly motivated by emotion, and there are a few flashes of it where you do get a sense of like, oh yeah, this is a real kind of romantic chemistry. But the rest of the time, it's just, oh, you got to do this thing with me. You've got to go to this place.
Well, that's the premise, innit? It's the premise.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, it's. And again, what we talked about before, the reason why the premise happens is flimsy. So that, I think, contributes to the fact that, the thing's not being driven by emotion and being driven by something, again, which is, like I said, flimsy, and it's not really that interesting. Yeah, that means that you weren't as invested as you otherwise would be. What do you think?
Yeah, I think invested is a good choice of term, seeing as Richard Gere likes to invest in things. But no, yeah, I think that's basically it, yeah, because it kind of starts off in a bit of a place where you don't really have a sense of why the characters are doing what they're doing. It means that ultimately then, from then on, I think it's kind of a weird limbo situation where it's like, obviously he is still paying for her, and yet there is this emotional aspect, and I don't think that necessarily works so well, because I think it means that still, ultimately she is in his employ. And
you are questioning throughout the movie, just to jump in, sorry, you are when she's giving him a bath and I don't know, maybe when she says, "Oh, I love you" at the end, there is something in your mind which is going, is she just pulling the biggest con ever of trying to convince this guy who she can tell is lonely, to fall in love with her so she can live it up large in a condo? Even though she turns it down at the end. But there is something that goes on like, oh shit, this could be just, it's transactional for him and it's transactional for her. Like, she is selling something, and she is selling her personality, and that in turn is going to make her, just get off the streets. And obviously that isn't the case with her character, but there is some, and it's not going to end up like that, obviously, because it's a romantic comedy, but there is some parts of the movie which you are again, yeah, I was thinking that. What do you think?
Yeah, well, actually, you know what? It's funny because I think that could be the flip side. Because I was saying it would be interesting if you played with the idea of Richard Gere having all this power and being kind of a weird, creepy, manipulative person who's crafting her into his vision of what he wants her to be as the ultimate act of purchase. And how that could be a really interesting foundation for a more serious and dark film. I think the flip side could be you could then have a alternative aspect to it where there's an ambiguity about who is using who, or who is using whom, sorry. And Julia Roberts, you could say, oh no, she's using Richard Gere, she's working him the same way she'd work anyone else. But if they got like Paul Thomas Anderson, like doing a film like this, I think it would be possibly a really great film. But instead it's just this film. So yeah, basically I think, the fact you're right, that there is a basis in which you could say, oh yeah, maybe she is just kind of taking prostitution to the next level by literally getting set flight. And obviously, I mean, the fact she turns out the condo, then you can argue she gets even more potentially, because I mean, let's not forget that one of the first things you find out about Richard Gere, one of the first things she finds out about Richard Gere, and one of the first things we find out about Richard Gere is that he had somebody set up in the condo, and now she's leaving him, and she's not getting anything. So maybe she's thinking, I need to make sure that I lock this down. So what a twist.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So yeah, that is something to look at. Again, well, you know what, Michael, that's a good segue, because you were talking about something gritty and more realistic, and obviously this movie was intended to be that in the first place, and I think it's worth now reading an article by Donna Gavin from the Boston Globe, which is titled "Pretty Woman Normalizes Something That Destroys Lives." So this article is basically going to focus on how, as the title would suggest, how Pretty Woman kind of lies to the audience about the profession of being a sex worker. But anyway, let's get into it. So, let me assure you that the tale that unfolds in Pretty Woman is fiction. As head of the Boston Police Anti-Human Trafficking Unit for the past 5 years, I know that the experience of young women in our own neighbourhoods and across the country who are involved in prostitution couldn't be more different. Without a solid education and family support and with limited options, it's easy for young girls and women to get lured into the sex trade. In Boston and other cities across the country, the vast majority of prostituted women are involved in pimp-controlled prostitution and sex trafficking. And here's the thing, they do mention that, don't they? At the start. They do mention this pimp, and I find it weird how casually it's played off. Like, oh yeah, this guy's a pimp, and oh, he was hit a woman or hit a girl or something for doing this. It's like, it's very casual how they talk about it, which I was... there's not that much in the movie about the actual profession of, being a prostitute, but for sure.
Pimping ain't easy.
It's not. It really
isn't.
But
you know who has it harder than pimps? Prostitutes.
Yeah, for sure. While the Julia Roberts character is concerned about making her rent in the opening scene of the movie, 3/4 of women in prostitution have been or are homeless. That's an incredible amount. 3/4. In addition to violence and homelessness, and often as a result of prostitution, many young women also suffer from addiction, disease, and emotional trauma. Prostitution is not a fairy tale. Pretty Woman normalizes something that destroys lives. It glamorizes prostitution and creates an illusion that prostitution is a voluntary, desirable occupation. The film suggests that prostituted people are knowledgeable and have other options they might have chosen. The reality is that prostitution and sex trafficking make up a harmful, pervasive, illegal, and violent criminal industry involving pimps and traffickers who are tied to gangs, drugs, and street violence. And so, that was basically it. So I just wanted to read that article because, again, that is something that, obviously, I'm not that knowledgeable about the profession of being a prostitute, and I imagine that's the same for you, Michael.
No. I mean, yes. I mean, it is... No, I'm not knowledgeable. Yes, it is accurate. Okay,
good. So that's the thing. When you watch this movie and are not that knowledgeable about this kind of thing, maybe you think, okay, being a prostitute, it's not that bad. Look at Julia Roberts. She's having fun with her gal pals, living it up in their apartment in Los Angeles. Can't be as bad as it.
So what you're saying is that this film does for prostitution what Oliver Twist does for being a teenage pickpocket.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think we should have had a scene where there was this old pimp and he starts singing a little song like cheerio and work those streets. Love it.
Well, that's the thing. It is obviously meant to be a romantic comedy. It's meant to be a quote-unquote fairy tale, but when you're setting this fairy tale in the modern world, and obviously this movie had an incredible cultural impact, maybe people don't realise how dangerous a profession it is. Maybe something to consider. And again, you could say, is that the movie's fault? Well, it kind of is, because if you start off with this idea that it's going to be a drama about being a prostitute, and it's going to involve Julia Roberts taking drugs, so there is a admission from the people who are producing this movie that they know what prostitution is actually like, and then to twist it and turn it into like a happy story, a fairy tale, is quite cynical when you know the realities of being a prostitute. So that is something that I think is something that needs to be looked at as, it's quite a bad thing to do. Yeah, because again, you're what's the best word for it, Michael? You're kind of whitewashing this.
Whitewashing, yeah, yes, whitewashing.
Whitewashing. When you know the situation is a lot worse, because that was the original movie. So yeah, and that is something to consider, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's definitely there, and ultimately, I think you could say it's at least implied their situation seems to be kind of irregular, in that it's. But then I guess it's not explained why it's irregular. I think that's probably what they should have done if they were going to do this and not have it be a kind of more serious kind of actual emotional film that really deals with or thematically kind of powerful film. Then they probably should have had it so there's some reason why they're in a not as bad situation, and that would obviously make a clear separation between their situation and the situation of actual victims of kind of prostitution and sex trafficking, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, basically, I agree with you that they didn't get it 100% on point.
No. So Michael, that is basically it now. Do you want to conclude first, because I talked for a bit?
Yeah, sure. So I want to compare this film to the other film we saw starring Julia Roberts, which was Notting Hill. And in some sense, I like this film more than Notting Hill. In another sense, I like it less. The sense in which I like it more is that, believe it or not, I actually did come out of this film believing that there was probably going to be a more sincere relationship than there was at the end of Notting Hill, where I really was just I don't believe these people are actually going to stay together at all. But then this film pretty much failed in every other sense. Number one, okay, Notting Hill, I found parts of it funny. I didn't find any part of this film funny, except for the one point you've already mentioned, which kind of fell out of place anyway, as a joke, as in, like you said, it might not have even been really intentional. Apart from that, yeah, the emotions, I think, are stunted for the first hour and a half of the film. So basically, only the last half hour is the bit that actually kind of communicates anything powerful. And even then, it's not particularly powerful because they have a great foundation to build it on. With all that said, I said it was fine, and I think, fine, really it means a 5. But when I really think about it, Notting Hill, I actually already have as a 5. And I kind of think maybe this film is more of a 4. So I'm going to put it above... I'm going to put it above Men in Black 2 and below GoldenEye. It's one of those rare occasions where I put a film right next to a film we did last week, but I actually think that's appropriate. So yeah, so it's a 4.
Okay. 4 out of 10, yeah, I think that's fair.
A high 4, I should say, if I was being nice.
High 4, okay. So 50 Shades of Grey is the movie this kind of reminded me of. And it's
I was kind of thinking of that too.
It's when fucking Richard Gere
He's playing the piano. Right?
No. It's when
really?
he gets Julia Roberts in his plane.
Oh,
and
okay.
they're flying off to San Francisco. It's I thought, I've seen another movie like this where this rich guy exploits a vulnerable young girl and takes him on a ride across in a private aeroplane or helicopter over a city on the west coast of America. Oh yeah, it's 50 Shades of Grey. And so yeah, that's what this movie kind of reminded me of. Obviously, it's a better movie than 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah. But if you look, obviously 50 Shades of Grey, we've talked about it, it's really problematic, but there is a joy in this movie, in Pretty Woman. Obviously the song, at the sense of it, Pretty Woman,
it's a real banger.
Real banger, really uplifting, very, very happy. But under the surface, that's the key thing. Under the surface, if you look at it, with a microscope.
Lens.
Yeah, a cynical lens, a microscope. You get your magnifying glass out, you can see, well, maybe this isn't as joyful as it seems. Maybe there's something a bit ugly going on underneath with the classism in the movie, with the fact that it portrays prostitution in an incredibly optimistic light compared to the real experiences of people who are prostitutes. And also, obviously, the fact that things are... Well, I'm not going to say it's it's bad that it's unrealistic, but of course it is a fairy tale, so whatever. I mean, that's not something to focus on, I guess, because, yeah, the movie calls itself a fairy tale, it's a fairy tale, whatever. But, yeah, I think that's the issue. I mean, I don't enjoy romantic comedies in the first place, but when you do get underneath this movie, it is, like we said, kind of a bit problematic in some areas. I do like that Richard Gere, his arc is about becoming someone who is not a capitalist. That's a good message. And that's something we should all embrace. But unfortunately, it's not enough to save this movie, Michael. And yeah, I'm going to give it, what did you give it?
So I guess I would give it, according to your rating, I gave it a 4.5.
Yeah, I'm going to probably give it a... What did I give Notting Hill? Because you compared it to Notting Hill, and I think Notting Hill is probably less problematic, but the romance between the two characters probably isn't as sincere as this.
That's exactly what I said. Well done, Luke. Congrats.
Yeah, no, you're right. I am agreeing with you. You're right. I just, that's the thing. Notting Hill seems more manufactured, seems more fake than this movie, which is kind of ironic, considering it's called a fucking fairy tale in this movie. But so I gave Notting Hill, Michael, I give Notting Hill a 5.5 out of 10.
Oh.
So I think it's fair.
That's about what I gave Notting Hill, actually. Because I gave it a 5, I think a high 5. Yeah,
I think it's fair, again, to probably give it a 4.5 out of 10. I think that would be fair. So kind of the same as you give it a high 4, I'm giving it a 4.5. Slightly less good, but obviously there's not much difference between the two. So anyway, Michael, we did not predict what James Bond's Rotten Tomatoes score for No Time to Die was going to be last week. We forgot to do it because we were so engrossed in the conversations about, John Boyega being James Bond.
Yeah.
We forgot. So on the count of 3, by the way, the movie's going to be released in November.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. So it's going to be a while. But anyway, we're going to, on the count of 3, say what Rotten Tomato score we think James Bond No Time to Die is going to get. Have you got a number in your head?
Okay, I got one, yeah.
Okay, you got one? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, 79.
Did you say 79?
I said 79.
I said 79.
What?
We literally do this so often. We've done this, I swear. Haven't we, 2 times we said the exact same one, another time we were, 1 off.
Okay, so 90 to 91, 84 to 82, and now we each said 79. Fuck.
That's so funny. We definitely both said 79.
Yeah, I was thinking you copied me because you were a bit delayed.
No,
so I was like, have you just done that to piss me off?
No, I swear, we definitely did both say 79. I was thinking in my head, 78. And then I kind of thought to myself, no, that's not an even number. So I was like, and also 78 kind of feels low, whereas 79 feels more. So yeah, literally, and I swear, obviously, I know, wow. And you trust it. Yeah, we literally both said, and that happens so many times. So I can't believe that. I don't know. Do you want to, what are we going to do?
Well, do you want to go higher or lower?
I think I'll go lower, seeing as I did say 78 was the other one I had in my head. So I'll go for 78.
Okay. It doesn't matter because it's close.
And yeah, you should you stick with 79 because yeah.
Okay, so there you go then. That's the prediction for James Bond No Time to Die. Again, the last 3 it doesn't really matter because we predict so close anyway. Whatever the score is, it's not going to make a difference. You're still 8 points ahead. Don't know when things are going to change, but yeah, if things do change or when they do change, it's not likely to change because of how close our predictions are. Go on.
I want to say something completely unrelated, but it is related to Rotten Tomatoes. I just want to say this now because I think it needs to be said, and then we'll bring it up later. The Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars, still has an audience score of 86%, which is the exact audience score it has retained since it was released. And anytime, and I just want to remind everybody of this because I feel like it's being forgotten. And I want to take this moment at the end of this podcast just to remind everyone, because eventually we're going to look at Rise of Skywalker again. But I want to remind everyone now that it's still 86%, and no matter how many verified ratings there are, it has remained at 86% for the entire time, which should not happen. It should move. Obviously, you know this. It should move by a few percentage points. Based on just a couple of different opinions coming in. But no, it's still on 86%, and it's probably going to be on 86% when we actually get around to reviewing the film. And I just want to remind everyone that if you ever, are bored, just go onto the Rotten Tomatoes and say, oh, look, it's now at 105,000 audience score, but it's still at 86%. Rotten Tomatoes is literally, there's no explanation. They have rigged it. There's no explanation. They're literally keeping it at 86%. if it ever was at 86%, which I doubt, because they're scuzzbags. So we shouldn't, so while we like to predict Rotten Tomatoes scores, I would just like to take this moment to say, fuck Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow. Now, I mean, look, if you can't trust Rotten Tomatoes, who can you trust, really?
That's true, yeah.
Anyway, wait, what do you have us doing next week, by the way, Michael?
I've got us doing Seven.
Yeah, okay, that is right. So, I'll ask now. Okay, so, Michael, what are we doing next week?
We're doing Seven.
7, yes.
Yeah, but it's got 7 in it, so it's Seven.
That's great. I'm looking forward to you saying that so much next time.
Yeah.
So yes, we have been selecting and reflecting on Pretty Woman because it's been 30 years since its release. And yeah, overall, I guess a movie which, if you just ignore stuff, it can be, a nice, happy romantic comedy film. But if you don't ignore things like we did, it's not that nice, or not as nice as it otherwise looks. So join us next week for 7. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.